So, why should you care about government IT? How about this? £100 million of your money wasted on government IT projects in 1 year. Does that make you care? That is nothing compared to the £12 billion the government blew on the completely failed NHS patient management system. That's the equivalent of 1.3 million university tuition fees. It's the equivalent of 50,000 brand new, fully kitted out NHS-grade ambulances. It's the equivalent of 250,000 teachers. It's the equivalent of 250 brand new schools. The government could have built 200,000 new houses with that money for struggling first-time buyers. It could have bought 650 new trains to make commuting easier for everyone. We are talking serious amounts of money being wasted on government IT. Money that could have fixed some of the biggest problems in society. Money that could have had a positive impact on the lives of millions of UK citizens, both now and future generations. But wait, described as the biggest IT failure ever seen, the biggest IT failure ever seen with your money, that £12 billion wasted shows that something is fundamentally broken in government IT. How the hell do you waste £12 billion? But there's hope. About 5 years ago, GDS, Government Digital Service, was formed. Anyone here from GDS? Okay, about 5 years ago, GDS, Government Digital Service, were formed, and their mission, not only to fix government IT, but to completely transform the relationship between citizen and state, moving the UK towards becoming an unprecedented, world-leading digital by default government, and doing this by putting users first, really focusing on UK citizens, and bringing agile software development into the public sector. But have they? Well, I'm Nick, and I've been working in the public sector. I'm going to tell you everything I have found out. Do GDS make any difference? Are we likely to see any more £12 billion biggest ever IT failures? Certainly hope not. How about all of you? Might there be opportunities in the public sector for people like you who like to come to conferences and learn? And how about Agile in the public sector? Could it be as good as Agile at high-performing organisations in the private sector? Or is it more like an embarrassing dad trying to be cool in front of all of his children's friends and completely failing? Let's find out. Oh, by the way, I've got a couple of books to give away, and I've got loads of domain-driven design infographics. So the first two people to ask a question get a book, and anyone else can have an infographic. They're in my suitcase somewhere. Pardon? The book... So you get a book, and the book is called Patterns, Principles and Practices of Domain-Driven Design. Sounds really fancy. It's great for being a doorstop. You can have the second book. The books are gone. We just have the infographics left now. Anyway, where were we? I remember I was being very negative about government, about all the money being wasted. So let's think about some of the positive things. Let me share with you some of my favourite public sector Agile quotes, starting with this. I'm so glad we extended the sprints to 3 weeks long. We get 1 week of solid development work now. The hallmarks of any high-performing Agile organisation, increasing those feedback cycles and spending more time planning than actually creating value. Okay? prepare yourselves. Programmers are a liability. The industry is moving towards generic rules engines and BPM tools so that we don't need programmers. Did anyone else get that memo? I didn't. I guess we should all start looking for new jobs. Okay, this next one is my favorite. The Oracle web server we will be using on this project is probably older than you. And if you're wondering, they were wrong. I'm 30, the web server is only 25. It's only 25, nothing to worry about. Okay. Stand-up is at 11, and actually, we sit down. It only lasts for an hour, though. Nothing to worry about here. Okay, who likes user stories? One person likes user stories. 3 people like user stories, good. Who likes this user story? I can't even read it out, I'm sorry. The best thing about this user story is that the Ivory Tower architects, they got to sew that, and they started scratching their heads. So, what goes there? What goes there? I can just picture it now. I can vividly picture that moment. It was beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to stop being sarcastic about government now, because actually what I'm about to tell you next, it may actually surprise you. There are many brilliant things about government IT, about Agile in the public sector. And undoubtedly, my absolute favourite is the uncompromising focus on delighting users. Even at the very top of government agencies now, everyone knows that user needs must come first. And if they don't know that, they quickly find out. And we can thank GDS for instilling this mindset across government. And the perfect example is the world-leading gov.uk, the home of the UK government on the internet. It's built and maintained by GDS and is a key part of their digital by default strategy, where most interactions will happen online. So it has to be easy and painless for citizens of all abilities. However, when you go to gov.uk, you are actually interacting with lots of different services built by lots of different government agencies. And it's thanks to GDS who mandate this consistent look and feel, so that citizens don't have to learn lots of confusing websites by different government agencies that all look and behave differently. Now here, we have 2 completely different services built by 2 completely different government agencies. On your left is the rent and lease details service created by the VOA. And on your right is a vehicle checking service created by Swansea's very own DVLA. Anyone here from the DVLA? I can see your name down there. No? They must be in the other talk. Hi, DVLA. Anyway, to citizens like us going to gov.uk, it's almost as if we're interacting with a government which is one cohesive organisation. Look, obviously we all know that's completely not true. But what does this mean for you as a software developer working in the public sector? Well, you like to write code, or you probably did at some point in your life and now you hate it, and you like to ship your code so your users can benefit from it. Who's ever shipped something before? Yeah, you probably need to go to more conferences. But those NHS people, they can't say that. So you're working in government, you want to ship some software, you want to have it on gov.uk where citizens can actually use it. But to do that, you must play a game with GDS called the assessment. A government project actually has multiple of these assessments acting as stage gates between the different phases. A government agency will start off in discovery. They'll try and work out who are the users of this service, what are their needs, how can we fund the project, how can we resource the project, what are the legislations and all these constraints we must work to. And once they've done that, once they think they know enough and they have a valid reason for spending taxpayer money, they then move on to the alpha. And it's the alpha phase where developers like us, the noisy lot, get involved. During alpha, delivery teams will build these prototypes, they'll put them through rounds of user research, and they'll rapidly iterate on them as they get feedback from those users. And then, when the agency feels comfortable, they've learned enough about what their users want, they then book their assessment with the gatekeepers at GDS. Now, assessment day rolls round, you go to Aviation House in High Holborn, the home of GDS, and you've got butterflies in your tummy, and you're then taken into this meeting room, more intimidating than the Dragon's Den, and sat opposite you are these fire-breathing GDS assessors glaring at you menacingly. They then start to quiz you on their 18-point digital service standard, of which the most prominent focus is ensuring user needs have been worshipped. If your agency hasn't done enough user research, you will fail. Trust me. And that means the whole team, including software developers. You must all have been involved in user research, and you must all deeply understand the needs of your users. Now, relax a bit, developers. No one's asking you to speak to anybody. However, you must have at least watched your user researcher in the lab putting your prototype in front of the users. At the very least, you need to have watched recordings of those sessions. And as you can see from point 2, user research is ongoing on a government project. You must continue to do user research. It's not this big upfront user research, it's continuous. And point 13 is what I talked about earlier, the consistent look and feel on gov.uk. And I think all of this is truly fantastic. Despite all my sarcastic quotes about government IT, I'm a massive believer of this, because I know that keeping delivery teams focused ensures that day-to-day decision-making is aligned with user needs. As a developer working in government, you don't just simply crank your way through a Jira ticket production line. No. You are encouraged, empowered. You're even expected to help shape the products and services you are building. And that's why you need to understand your users. And to be honest with you, working in government was a real eye-opener, a bit of a shocker for me. Watching those user research sessions, me and my teammates, we would spend all day building these applications and testing them. We would know every piece of text, every button click, every valid combination of form inputs. It would all seem so easy and obvious to us. Citizens will love it. But then we would see users on the brink of giving up because it was so complicated for them. Seriously, watching users actually use the application you build, it changes your mindset and it helps you to really satisfy their needs, I promise you. Anyway, do you remember how I said GDS wanted to bring Agile into the public sector to speed up delivery and save loads of taxpayer money? Just before I compared it to the embarrassing dad. Well, how your team works is also part of the assessment criteria. Now, you probably won't be surprised to hear this, but Scrum is absolutely dominant in the public sector, at least in my experience. But thankfully, depending on your perspective, GDS, they don't enforce it. They're looking for cross-functional teams of user researchers, business analysts, developers, testers, subject matter experts, etc. They want to make sure you can quickly iterate your service as you get feedback from users. I have seen teams who took a more continuous flow Kanban approach. That's absolutely fine too. And being honest, I have seen some good Agile things in the public sector. Forget all those quotes. I have seen some good things. I've seen genuinely cross-functional teams who can quickly iterate their service. I've seen good use of user stories, not the message bus one. User stories like focusing on the needs of users. I've seen weekly show and tell sessions engaging wider parts of organisations, government organisations, showing frequent progress and really demonstrating the benefits of Agile. I've seen continuous delivery led by well-known continuous delivery experts. And I've seen some great technical practices like TDD, pair programming, and code review. Did I say great? I meant contentious. But I've also seen some agile things that make me want to close my eyes and never open them again. Renaming project managers to scrum masters and expecting magical things to happen. Thinking of user stories as just another way to rewrite your waterfall requirements. Planning the next 20 sprints in precise detail on a Gantt chart. I've seen some interesting approaches to estimation. Anyway, as part of these requirements, there's also an expectation that your team is using tools and technologies that provide you with the technical flexibility to iterate quickly. So during the alpha, your team will also have some important technical activities, spiking up different technologies, thinking about the end-to-end implementation, thinking about all of the different test environments you'll need. And at your alpha assessment, you'll also be quizzed on these things too. Now, I'm always averse to centralized command and control, ivory tower architects. And let me promise you, GDS, they're not that. They're not here to dictate what technologies you must use or how your team must work. You must use Java. You must do TDD. You must do pair programming. It's not like that. However, I'm sure if you're doing something obviously stupid that wastes taxpayer money, they will step in. I hope they will. You're not using version control. Go away. You're not going anywhere near taxpayer money. I hope. To be honest with you, I have seen some good technologies in the private sector. Linux, Docker, Scala, Java, Python. They're not all using 25-year-old Oracle web servers, thankfully. And talking of technology, and this is big, talking of technology, GDS are huge advocates of open source. They are there to stop government agencies getting locked into expensive proprietary closed source software where better open source alternatives exist. But even better than that, bigger than that, GDS are huge advocates of creating open source software. They want all government source code to be open. And I'm not just talking about libraries here. If you go to Hmrc's GitHub, not now, you can see hundreds of open source projects, the actual front ends and domain-driven microservices of the applications running on gov.uk. And as a software developer working in the public sector, I absolutely loved coding in the open. But as a citizen and a taxpayer, I kind of buy into the idea even more. All of this transparency and sharing between government agencies, it means they're being more creative, collaborative, making more efficient use of our money. It does stop them getting locked into expensive proprietary software. And it holds all developers to a high standard of work. When your code is in the open, there's no hiding. Now, it's not quite that intense. If you set out with good intentions to write clean, maintainable code, you'll be fine. It doesn't have to be absolutely immaculate code. But if you create sloppy code that's a maintenance burden for the next generation and waste taxpayer money, you're probably going to have some problems. Anyway, after you finally convince GDS on all of these points and more, and you finally feel the excitement from passing your alpha, when you eventually sober up a couple of days or a week later, then comes the confusion. What are we supposed to do now? Now you have to do it for real. You move on to beta. Beta is actually a really exciting phase of the project. You start building the real system, no more Node.js prototypes. You've got hookup to the back-end systems, real data, you've got real users. And ideally, at this point, you'll be practicing continuous delivery, deploying on a frequent, maybe even a daily basis, maybe even multiple times per day. But you'll start off, though, in a private beta, which is an invite-only phase with a small number of users. So how about when you want to open your service up to a wider audience on gov.uk? Well, a beta assessment with the gatekeepers at GDS stands in your way. Beta assessment kind of follows the same format as the alpha. Same fire-breathing dragon, same dragon's den, same 18-point digital service standard. Only this time, the questioning is a bit more rigorous. GDS will be looking for more examples of what you've done and what you plan to do. How many users did you speak to? How do you know you're satisfying their needs? How did you iterate your service based on their feedback? Same for the technical questioning too. Show us the architecture of your system. Show us your open source code. How do you work as a team? How do you implement a feature from start to finish? And if you pass your beta and you want to go live on gov.uk without the beta banner, you guessed it, it's another GDS assessment. Now, I may be giving you the impression that all of these assessments are lots of effort, very tiring, and waste of effort. But that's not true. Quite the opposite. I have no doubt. Think where government's coming from. £12 billion, biggest ever IT failure, and where they're trying to get to. Unprecedented, world-leading, digital by default government. I have no doubt that these assessments are playing a vital role in the transformation, and they're stopping government agencies waste tons of your money. However, there are some things in government IT which disappoint me. They deeply disappoint me. In fact, they kind of trouble me. About a year ago, the ex-head of GDS, the man at the very top, Mike Bracken, said this just before he left. You can't be half agile. Ironically then, I think you know where this is going, ironically then, or perhaps expectedly, this is exactly what I've seen in the public sector. Half-agile organisations, where these digital teams build pretty front-end websites for gov.uk, but when you peel back the facade, it's the same enterprise IT departments, building the back-end systems, managing the data. Very little appears to have changed here. And consequently, these digital teams, they are not fully empowered to achieve their business outcomes. Any time they need to change business rules or amend data access, even if they just want to add a text box to a web page, they're at the complete mercy of these enterprise IT departments whose feedback cycles are in months and not days or hours. And this massive canyon between digital and IT has an incredibly negative impact on the ability to quickly meet user needs and to spend taxpayer money efficiently. It's the very things that GDS are trying to fix. Imagine this. Imagine you've been hired to build a new application. Your team builds the front end, but other teams build the back-end systems and the data. The collaborative overhead is absolutely insane, especially when those back-end systems and data are outsourced to different suppliers. It's very easy to make changes in your little Scrum team doing continuous delivery, but then you have to have endless meetings with all of these different suppliers, and you have to wait months for them to go away and build their pieces. And we're not finished yet, because then you have the fun of integrating all of these different systems, debugging the end-to-end journey, and working out where the problems are. It's your piece, it's your piece, it's your piece. And we're still not finished, because then there's the politics. Everyone trying to wrestle as much control as they possibly can into their part of the system. I need counselling just thinking about the politics. I really do. Maybe Mike was right. You can't be half agile. High-performing organisations in the private sector, those we all look to, the Netflixes, the Spotifys, they have cross-functional teams aligned by business capability. They have end-to-end continuous delivery with overall cycle times in hours or minutes, not months. Look, I'm not trying to trivialise organisational alignment. I know it's hard. In fact, I'll be giving a whole talk just on the topic of aligning organisational and technical boundaries at Domain Driven Design Europe next year. Tickets on sale now. Sorry. But some government agencies, they're just not prepared, or they don't want to, or they don't know how to make the hard organisational changes necessary to be agile. But what disappoints me the most is that GDS, they don't, or they don't have the power to, hold these internal IT teams to the same standards as the digital teams. Behind the pretty little front-end websites, government agencies can, and they still do, spend your money on outsourced waterfall IT and unnecessary enterprise junkware. All of those good things we were talking about earlier, the assessments and the standards, open sourcing their code, a lot of that stuff doesn't apply to these back-end teams. Now, being fair to GDS, they have introduced spend controls. So these back-end teams, they can't just blow hundreds of millions and billions. But they can still do a lot of crazy things. So yeah, that upsets me. But something else that upsets me is the lack of thinking of building a long-term culture in some government agencies. High-performing organisations, they tend to invest in their people, help them to grow, help them to develop broad skill sets, and give them the freedom to be creative. Companies like Sandro's Codurance, for example, I'm sure his talk later is going to be quite good on teal organisations. These organisations, they have an engineering culture where everyone is passionate, always improving, trying to produce software more efficiently, to deliver value more frequently. And they have collaborative, innovative people who are given the freedom to drive organisations forward. And just think about this. GDS are trying to take government to an unprecedented digital by default from a £12 billion biggest ever IT failure. That is a huge ambition. All government agencies. So as part of this transformation, technology and software are at the very heart of it. So all government agencies, they need an engineering culture built on continuous improvement and one that empowers everyone to think long term. Unfortunately, I've seen a bit too much of short-term contractors being hired with the project mindset. I'm not against contractors, just too many of them with the short-term mindset. And one last thing I quickly want to moan about is the way some government agencies, they kind of scrape their way through these GDS assessments. Rather than embracing the GDS philosophy and actually relishing the opportunity they have to make a difference to the lives of millions of UK citizens, they see it as a box-ticking exercise and a bit of a mad scramble at the last moment. A bit like at school, doing all your revision the night before the exam. But as I found out as a schoolboy who loved to play video games instead of revising, mad scrambles, they're not a great strategy. I can hear my parents in my ear now shouting at me to do my revision. Anyway, I do have some. Let's see if we can fix government IT. Let's see if we can fix it. How about this? How about government agencies should be more open about how they develop and deliver services? Just like open sourcing the code holds developers to a high standard of work, the way in which agencies build and deliver services should be in the open too, holding entire departments to a high standard of work. And GDS, they could easily make that part of the assessment criteria. How many blog posts have you written about your new service? How many white papers have you published? How many conferences have you bothered to speak at, showing taxpayers how you are spending their money? Now, encouragingly, some government agencies, including GDS, they are highly transparent. They write lots of blog posts about their culture and the technical architecture of the systems they're building. They show that openness in government IT is possible. It is realistic. In fact, they're showing us that there's no excuse for the rest of government IT to not be more open too. Now, I do know why some government agencies aren't more open. And it's the same reason they're having lots of other problems. They are desperately lacking people who understand organisational agility. Seriously, they need to hire people who are experienced with continuous delivery and agile software development and put them in positions of influence where they can lead this culture change. Think about all of the successful transformations you've heard of. All of the ones I've heard of, all the ones I read about, all the ones I see at conferences, all the ones I speak to my friends about, even Hmrc Digital, who I'll tell you more about later. They all had leadership who were experienced with continuous delivery and agile software developments. And in all of those stories, they always had this passionate group of people who were keen, trying to move change forward, trying to be better. And there are lots of those people in government. There are lots of amazing people in government trying to be better, trying to move forward, trying to do things the right way. But there are some people who are fiercely resistant to change, and they are in positions of serious power. But we can't let them hold back government IT. We can't let them keep wasting our money. We can't let them keep treating digital and IT as completely separate things. Does that make sense to any of you? Well, I thought someone would like to argue. Thank you. And GDS, this is something they could also make part of the assessment criteria. How quickly can a business rule be changed? How quickly can a text box be added to a web page and its content stored in a database? Is all of the code open source? No, really. All of it. No joking around this time, guys. Is all of the code open source? All of those good things that have worked, that are working, they now need to be applied to the whole system. Otherwise, GDS are kind of encouraging these silos, the bureaucracy, and all of the expensive handovers and collaborative phases. The system is encouraging these behaviours. And I think there's a solution where GDS can help introduce openness, where they can help government agencies to empower agile people, and where they can assess the full end-to-end system. I think GDS, I think they need more power, but I think they need to be partially embedded in government agencies, where they can actually see them building and developing these services, and they can feel the pains of their siloed culture, and they can help those government agencies to start writing blog posts and talking at conferences. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it would be easy for GDS to do that. Anyway, I've been moaning for a long time. I'm going to say something good now. We can take hope from the fact that some government agencies are doing a far better job than others. They're showing us that really transformation is possible. Digital by default, it absolutely is possible. And if some government agencies are doing things right, they should all be able to benefit from that. And this quote from Hmrc Digital is a great example of what can be achieved in government IT. Hmrc Digital deploys to production multiple times per day and has a platform running over 300 microservices. Now, I worked very closely with Hmrc. I know a lot of the things they're working on, a lot of the things they've achieved, and I can promise you, this is just one of their many inspiring achievements in government IT. And in this article where the quote's taken from, they're talking about the challenges of their 3-year transformation from outsourcing and waterfall and big IT to this culture of continuous delivery and DevOps. And they're quite open about their culture clashes with more traditionally minded IT teams. Other government agencies, they can benefit from Hmrc's journey. They can all achieve continuous delivery. And seeing what worked for Hmrc, they can get there much sooner at less cost to the taxpayer. If you get a chance, I do recommend you read that full article. It's actually a great example of why government agencies should be more open. Now, after telling you how horrible and broken government IT is, I'm now going to convince you why you absolutely must go and work in government IT. Who likes a challenge? Okay, a few of you like a challenge. I'm talking to some of the right people. Quite frankly, government IT needs more people like you. People who like to learn, people who like to come to conferences, people who like to keep up with the industry. And not that industry where Agile means replacing your programmers with gimmick enterprise software. Not that one. You saw what's possible with Hmrc, delivering their 300 microservices every 50 seconds on their big, amazing platform. I made that bit up about the 50 seconds. But really, it's people like you who understand continuous delivery, who understand DevOps. You can help other government agencies achieve those same remarkable things as Hmrc. Really, it's you people. And hopefully I didn't scare you earlier with all that GDS Dragon's Den talk. I promise you, if you put your users first, you open source your code, and you genuinely care about spending taxpayer money efficiently, you'll be absolutely fine. Or maybe you won't. Maybe I'm just lying and I want the GDS Dragons to eat you. I quickly want to doff my hat to a lot of the amazing people I worked with in government IT. Despite all those people who didn't want to change, I worked with loads of really talented people and lovable personalities. And I can promise you, you will have big challenges in government, but you'll have lots of capable and dependable people to face those challenges with. And I wasn't going to say this, but I'll say it. I'll tell you a secret about one of the teams I worked with. We used to have this Friday ritual. It started off quite normal. At stand-up on Friday, someone would ask a question. As we went round stand-up, everyone would try and guess the answer. Sounds kind of boring. But every week, kind of got harder and harder to go round stand-up without bursting out laughing and falling on the floor. Because the questions would get weirder and weirder. Like one week we had, what's the world's biggest pizza? One time we had, what's the world record for the number of dogs skipping on a rope? But the best part about this game was when people from other teams would come to our stand-up on Friday, and they would just be stood there looking at us thinking, what on earth is wrong with these absolute lunatics? So look, it's a small thing, but it does show that in government IT, you are allowed to smile. You are allowed to look like you're enjoying yourself. You are allowed to enjoy yourself. Basically, what I'm saying is that the more people like you in government, the more chance of fixing the problems, and the more chance of achieving that unprecedented digital by default government that has a massive impact on the lives of everyone. And just think, with all the money you can help government save, we could all have free tuition. We could build enough houses to fix the housing crisis. And we could buy so many trains that even Jeremy Corbyn can find a seat. Do it for Jeremy. Right, so I'm almost done now. Let's finish the talk. Have GDS made any difference? Well, if we look at gov.uk, the quality of services on gov.uk is as good as any government in the world, if not better. Other governments are copying the GDS model. GDS have made a huge difference here. And Agile in the public sector, it's not all like an embarrassing dad. There is lots of good Agile stuff happening in the public sector. Some dodgy stuff too. And open sourcing the code. Governments open sourcing their code. That's incredible. There's hundreds, thousands maybe, of government projects in the open on GitHub. And I think that's truly astonishing. So looking at all those things, GDS, they have made an absolutely monumental difference in government IT. But we saw those problems that are still there. This digital and IT thing is just utter nonsense. Massive waste still happening there. These back-end teams don't have to open source their code. Some government agencies not thinking long-term about the engineering culture. Still lots of things to improve. So my final word to you is, if you aspire to work on something important, something that matters, something that makes a difference to the lives of millions of people, Go and work in government and help GDS to make it digital by default. Seriously, there are very few opportunities on the planet bigger or more rewarding than that. I'm finished. Oh, by the way, that's the name of my book.